Hi, everybody. Welcome to not First Fridays, but this is the banner there. Welcome to Immigration Updates with me, Fiona McEntee. I'm an immigration attorney. I am originally from Dublin, Ireland, but I am now a proud naturalised US citizen. And I've been practicing immigration law for my career, which has been 13 years or so. We're based in Chicago, but we help a lot of people throughout the US and those abroad. So I'm just going to go actually live on Instagram as well, if you guys will bear with me for a minute. Hi Instagram. Hi everybody who's joining. I'm trying to kind of tap into my technology expertise and go live on multiple platforms. So I think people are seeing this here from Instagram and then through my computer, through StreamYard on LinkedIn and Facebook and a few others. So for those who are just joining, welcome to today's immigration updates. I am immigration attorney. I am not anybody's attorney here, although I have some clients of mine. Hi, Laura. Thanks for commenting. So feel free to comment. I think I can see some of the comments that come in. I don't know that I won't be able to respond to them in writing, but I'll try and acknowledge them here and I'll try and take some questions. I mean, today's update really is to talk about the new immigration option for startups. It's something that I am so passionate about, to the point that a reporter all the way in India got in touch with me on Monday for a comment when she heard about the new update from the Biden administration, and she was mentioning that she knows it's my favorite topic. Hi Marco, thanks for popping in. Thanks everybody here on Instagram for saying hi. So I don't know how long I'll be today. It won't be as long as the usual ones where I sometimes can be 45 minutes to an hour, but really the purpose of today's update is to chat about this new immigration option for startups. I'm so excited about this. And there's so many stakeholders like myself who've been very actively involved in the startup community, specifically in relation to immigration options. And so I guess I'll start by saying that it sometimes comes as a surprise to people when they find out that the US does not have a specific immigration option for startups. I have been getting some comments. I've been getting a bit of trolling on my LinkedIn by people telling me that I'm wrong about that and that there are options. And so it's always interesting to get that feedback, because this is what I do day in, day out. And so I know the immigration system and I know the business immigration system. I know all the options that are available. And I can absolutely tell you that there is not a specific immigration option for startup founders in the sense of like a startup visa. There are some options that may be able to work for people's situation, but there's not an option specifically for the founders of startups. I think some people who've been, kind of commenting, and I think they might be referencing the E2 visa, perhaps, maybe, and that is a kind of a whole different premise. Even earlier on today, actually, there was a call with some of the government stakeholders, so the USCIS, which is the agency involved in adjudicating cases. They'll be taking these applications. There was representatives from the USCIS, from the Department of Homeland Security. The USCIS is under that umbrella. And so they were taking questions about this as well. And they specifically were talking about how the existing options are not the E2 is for people who invest their own money into a new entity here in the US. And it's only for people who are from an E2 country. The startup visa, or this international entrepreneur rule, is something different, right? The premise is you have this idea, whether it's, a tech company or, healthcare tech, or it is a lot of food related startups, or it could be an app, or it could be, there's lots of different types, think of like the big tech companies, like the Airbnbs of the world type of thing. You have this idea, you want to set up your company in the US, you go to investors and you present the idea to them, you pitch it, right? There's lots of incubators, there's lots of different ways to get your idea in front of investors. And then you get investment in the form of venture capital, angel investors. There's a few different ways that capital is structured. So this is what the startup visa is kind of, or this international entrepreneur rule, IER, is for. It's for this type of situation. I see somebody saying, yes, we did it. The IER is a great first step. And the next stop is real startup visa. So I agree. So the IER is like a temporary matter that's done through regulation. But what we really need is Congress to pass the startup visa law as an act. And so to have something in legislation. But for now, this is an option that we're so happy to have. The history is pretty complicated of the IER. And essentially what happened was it was an option that was created under the Obama-Biden administration. And it was supposed to take effect in I think, so Obama, Biden were leaving in January. It was supposed to take effect in the June, in the summer thereafter, in the middle of the Trump presidency. And they pretty much straight away, before it even went into effect, said they were getting rid of it. And again, people were commenting on my LinkedIn saying, that the Trump administration was supportive of business and stuff like that. And they specifically tried to get rid of this program before it even started. So much to the extent that they were sued by our friends at the National Venture Capital Association, took a lawsuit against them. And so the National NVCA, National Venture Capital Association, their members are venture capitalists, right? Are people who are investing in these startups. And so they obviously have a vested interest in wanting to make sure that the companies that they're investing in are going to be, or that the founders are going to be here in the US to grow the companies. And so there was lawsuits against the Trump administration for them trying to terminate this program. And so basically what happened is that nobody obviously applied because they said they were going to get rid of it straight away. So no one applied for the program, and it went through all sorts of litigation, and really never really was it an option for people because of the Trump administration's desire and efforts to terminate it. So then earlier on, so that was kind of, it was just kind of in limbo basically. And then a lot of us were doing tons of advocacy work in relation to this. I know I had started writing op-eds on this topic back in November, and many late nights trying to get somebody to take interest in this, and it was pretty tough. And then my friend Bob wrote a piece for the Sun Times and interviewed me and Jeff, the general counsel, I think, for the National Venture Capital Association, and some others. And then we started to get a bit of momentum around it. And then I co-wrote an op-ed with my friends here, the Illinois Science and Technology Coalition. Colleen Egan and Matt Bragg, we wrote an op-ed together, and that got published in Crain's Chicago about this issue. And so we really were talking about the need for a startup. My friend Tamina, another great immigration attorney based out in Seattle, she wrote an op-ed with Stuart Anderson, who writes for Forbes. So a lot of us were trying to get awareness surrounding this issue. And what happened was, earlier this week, the Biden administration said that they're now going to be fully implementing this option. Woo! So it's the international entrepreneur rule is now going to be an option for people. Now, a couple of things. I just want people to be really careful here, because I've seen a couple of people on TikTok talking about how immigration attorneys, misrepresenting, just kind of confusing really what the option is about. You really, saying it's for people who are investing in companies and things like that. And you want to just be careful that you're working with somebody who understands the kind of startup community and the players involved, and like kind of what this looks like, right? So this looks like you going to get investment from VC funds or from government grants. And so just make sure that, whoever you're dealing with really understands that. I will also say that it is fresh off the press, or, hot off the press. Even earlier on today, the USCIS didn't really have all the specifics for us. The questions that we asked, I specifically asked them about processing times and whether we would be able to premium process these applications, and they did not know that. They were looking into that. So it is a relatively new option. So just make sure that whomever you're working with is able to advise you properly in relation to this. And so just like some words of warning, I will say the USCIS said they are going to be doing webinars about this, and that it really was a kickoff call that they had today. And similarly, I think that we will also be doing webinars, and this again is like a kickoff intro to this international entrepreneurial IER. It is commonly known as the startup visa sometimes, but it's not actually a visa. Amy, my friend Amy Maldonado just joined. Hi Amy, she's asking whether we're talking about IER. Yes, I am talking about the International Entrepreneur Rule. I didn't have a chance to update my banner through StreamYard earlier to put that in. So it incorrectly says First Fridays, even though we're not on it's Friday, but not the first Friday. And we're talking about IER. Amy's filing one next week. Okay, USCIS did a teleconference this morning about this, Amy, and they didn't really have a lot of details about processing times or anything like that. But it's an exciting option that has really not been available up until now. So, okay, let's go over the eligibility and kind of who this is for. We kind of spoke about how it's for founders of startups. So the idea is it's for people who can show, for startup entrepreneurs who can show that they have a substantial ownership interest in a startup entity that has been created in the past 5 years in the US. Okay, so they, and I think it can be up to, I think it's up to 3, there's multiple founders can apply for this as well. So not just one founder can apply for this. Oh, Christina is saying this is already host, so helpful. Thanks, Christina, another immigration attorney. We did an event through Financial Poise last year, but or last year, feels like last year, every week feels like a long time. And I think I'll be doing some educational presentations for our immigration lawyers chapter. So for our AILA Chicago chapter, this is something that I care so deeply about, and I just know a lot about the startup community. So I'm happy to help educate other immigration lawyers about this. So multiple founders from the same startup can apply for this. The startup needs to be created within the past 5 years in the US. And really the overarching kind of theme is that you need to show that the business has potential for rapid growth and job creation, right? And so how do you kind of show that, right? You need to show kind of what I would say, there's lots of business plans. A lot of times startup entrepreneurs, this is what I find when working with them, is that they are pitching to people to get money. So they already have a really cool pitch deck that they have put together. And so, they have amazing stuff that they are using to try to get investment from. So, kind of look to what they have already. You want to show that they themselves are going to have an active and central role in this, and that they're well positioned to do that. So talking about what kind of experience they have, talking about, and it can be their experience with the startup thus far. So sometimes this can be foreign students, right, who, maybe they haven't had other jobs before, and so they don't necessarily have experience outside of the startup. But I think you can definitely use the experience thus far with the startup to show that they're well positioned to take it further. Obviously, if they're a founder, it was their idea, they've gotten it to this point, and so that will be important to show. Then you're showing that that they're going to provide significant public benefit to the US based on their role as the entrepreneur. Okay, so how do we show this, that they're likely to provide significant public benefit? There's 2 things that they're going to look at. They're going to look to see if that they've raised significant investment from qualified US investors. That have successful investment records. So money like angel investors, venture capital funds. So looking at that, it's like 250 grand is kind of the threshold that they had set. That was originally that was modified. That was higher actually in the proposed rule, and then based on comments that they received, the USCIS received, or under the Obama administration, basically it was brought down to 250k. So 250k from angels, VCs, that type of thing, or that you've received significant awards or grants for economic development from like local government, so grants in other ways. And I think like 100,000 in grants is the kind of threshold that they mentioned, or that you partially meet either or both of those. So, that's good to know, that it doesn't appear to be like a clear cut. If you don't have 250k or 100,000, then you're out of luck. It seems to be like you can use a combination of those. And if you're using the combination, you're showing, again, compelling evidence that the startup is kind of well positioned to grow substantially. And so rapid growth and job creation is like the overarching kind of, theme of what this is about. So, this is not a visa, it's a grant of parole. So that's more of a technical term for us immigration attorneys, but it's kind of important now, right? Now that people cannot get into embassies to get visa stamps in their passport, this is important. This distinction is critical, because in theory, what can happen is somebody can get this case approved through the USCIS here, filing a case here through the USCIS, and then they can get the parole granted and then enter on that. There was a bit of confusion on the webinar earlier today, because somebody mentioned, or on the USCIS teleconference today, somebody mentioned the Department of State and filing it through the embassies. And as far as we can tell, this is only going through the USCIS here. So again, this is kind of evolving, right? Even the USCIS does not really fully know how this is all going to work, because very few of them have actually been filed. I mean, a few of them have been filed, but I think only one or two have been actually approved because of the Trump administration's, desire to rescind the program, basically, as before it even got started. It's also important to note that spouses and children can also accompany the person, and the spouse is able to get an independent work authorization. And so they can get that. Again, there's a lot of unknowns, right? As far as the biggest unknown that I think is the processing times. That's what I asked the USCIS today, whether they would be eligible to get premium processing. They didn't say whether that would happen. Okay, David's asking, what if it's a French startup or a Turkish startup that wants to expand into the US? Okay, so this is a scenario that we deal with quite often right now, is what happens when foreign startups want to come into the US. So the way this rule is written, it specifically refers to kind of funds from US sources. But potentially there might be other ways to leverage this. And somebody else had asked me that as well, where, a startup in another country had kind of gotten grants from foreign governments, and whether they wanted to come in, whether that would make them eligible. I mean, the way it is written right now is requiring those funds, the venture capital, from US sources. But I would say that, depending on a lot of VCs here and investors invest in foreign entrepreneurs, or would invest in these high potential startups. So it might be worthwhile to look at the, getting in touch with some VCs or angel investors to see whether or not they could get investment there. Or again, those grants, I think maybe the grants might be a bit harder to come by. It might be more qualifying on the getting the investment from US investors. And they were very clear to make it, it was very, pretty clear that it was not any type of US funds. It did have to be from qualified US investment. So your friends and family, investing like that wouldn't necessarily work for that. It should be, these investors who have experience investing in companies. So, I mean, I would say for those European, not, but in this question, European startups, you know, they might have other options. But also, I mean, to me, like why I love working on startup immigration stuff is that, and really immigration in general, is that we get to really tell the story of the company and of the founders to the USCIS. And, you know, coming out of the shadows of the pandemic, I think, I mean, innovation is more important than ever before. And immigrants are so innovative and they're so entrepreneurial. And, you know, I think that we need to really be welcoming these immigrant entrepreneurs to the US and not trying to push them away at any given moment. So I think that whatever the foreign startup has done in their home country could be relevant to putting forth a case for them here. But we just would have to see what type of startup it is. Can they set up a US entity? And is there another option that might work for them? In that case, there's an intercompany transfer visa. There is an E2 visa that is for people from France or Turkey. If they don't have this type of venture capital funds or other types of funds, perhaps there might be other options, or the L company transfer visa. Somebody's asking, are there different rules for different countries? So for this international entrepreneur rule is not country specific. So this is for everybody across the board, regardless of where they're from. Some countries do have specific immigration options that are specific to citizens of that country. So for instance, Canada and Mexico has, you know, the TN visa and the professional level visa. Chile, Singapore have a H1B1. Australia has E3 visa. So there are some countries that have certain specific visa options. The E2 is based on treaties that foreign countries have with the US. So that's kind of particular to that. But as far as this international entrepreneur rule goes, there are no specific kind of requirements that are based on country. Hi Corey, thanks for popping in. Good to see you. So yeah, I mean, this is the IER, International Entrepreneur Rule. It is commonly referred to the startup visa or a startup visa, but it is not a visa. It's a grant of parole, which is, I guess, a technical kind of legal thing. But again, important because people are not getting into embassies to get visa stamps right now. It's very, very difficult. I would say, you know, your takeaways from this should be that this is an exciting new option that really hasn't properly been available, given kind of the attempted rescission in the past. So, you know, it's a pretty new option here. It's still pretty fresh. You know, there's a lot of unknowns as far as like procedurally how this process is going to go, how the processing times are going to go. So I think we just kind of need to watch this space, but I would put this on your radar, both as if you're an immigration attorney and you're working in this space at all, put this on your radar. If you're an immigrant, if you are a co-founder, founder, would-be founder, if you're a foreign student, excuse me, a lot of times I work with foreign students who are in this exact spot. So I do a lot of work with incubators here in Chicago and kind of beyond, actually in foreign countries as well. I've done presentations for incubators about US immigration options. And I do a lot of, I give a lot of advice to foreign students, thousands of foreign students over the years, because I was one myself. So they're very near and dear to my heart. But universities here really support and incubate these types of startups and these types of ideas. And the article that myself and the Illinois Science and Technology Coalition wrote, we gave a lot of stats about the just the level of involvement that foreign students have in these university incubators and these startups that come out of them. I can't remember offhand whether it was 50 or 60%, but it was like a very high percentage of these startups that come out of university has had at least a foreign co-founder. And today on the USCIS call, they mentioned, you know, the startups that are coming that come out both of Silicon Valley and then beyond as well, and kind of just spoke about how, you know, how important immigrants have been to the landscape here in the US. So I'm excited that there's a new option. It's not the end of the road by any means, right? The goal is that Congress will hopefully pass something, a full option into law. and that would hopefully be a startup visa of sorts. So we'll have to wait and see. But for now, I would just say that like it's just so nice to be able to share some really positive immigration news on the startup immigration front. I want to say thanks to everybody who's been involved in this movement for so long. It's been a real long journey of advocacy, of just trying to create awareness, as well, education, because I do think people are surprised when they hear that the US does not have an immigration option specific to startups, to the founders of startups. A lot of other countries take a much more welcoming approach to this. And when you think about it, we haven't really had a new immigration option in 20 plus, years and years and years and years. And it was long before the internet or anything like that was in, here in people's homes, and just the tech culture that we have today was not envisioned by the current immigration system. So, it kind of makes sense why we don't have one. It doesn't make sense why we haven't tried to change that, why we can't change that, why we haven't done up until now. And this was a great move by the Obama-Biden administration. And it's a real shame that it wasn't fully implemented by the Trump administration. But, for now, that's water under the bridge, and we have this opportunity to use this option, and we're really excited. And I look forward to sharing more news with you as it becomes available. As I said, still a lot of uncertainty surrounding this, but it's the International Entrepreneur Rule, IER, commonly kind of known as like a startup visa, although it's not technically a visa. And it's for the founders of US startups that are that have high potential for job creation and growth. I'm getting some questions here, but I'm going to have to wrap up. I would say, for case specific questions, you need to go to your own attorney. Really, we're happy to do consultations. We can't really give individual advice or questions in this type of forum, general info, but we will have somebody else. If somebody was, okay, one other question, I think, on the IER. Somebody was saying, could I speak about the process, about the order in which you would need to process the application for the new visa, specifically whether you would need funding for the VC prior to applying? Yes. So, normally for all applications, benefits, you need to show eligibility at the time of filing. And that's the case for pretty much everything. So you need to kind of have that forms part of the case. Sometimes it can become a chicken and an egg type situation. We see this a lot with our musician clients, where people don't want to book gigs until they get their visa, but they won't get their visa until they book the gigs. It's the same for investors in the E2. They don't want to invest the funds until they get the visa, but they certainly will not get the visa until the funds have been put into the company. Again, that's like the separate visa where you're investing your own money. You're welcome. So hopefully that answered your question, Maria. Christina, you're so welcome. Thanks to everybody for jumping on. Kept it kind of short and sweet, half an hour short for my presentations. You're welcome, Dermot. Good to see everybody. Hopefully people get to enjoy the weekend ahead. Feel free to drop us a line if you want to book a consultation, if it's in something for your specific situation. Otherwise, stay tuned, and we'll update you as we get some news. Okay, thanks everybody. Take care.